Wake up to a new morning, pop in a little nostalgia, just be kind and listen to the rewind.
Welcome to the Rewind Podcast, the show that explores TV and film through a queer millennial lens.
Translation: we're a couple of latchkey kids who grew up to have too much time on our hands and started a podcast to talk about TV and movies. I'm Keenan.
I'm Jonah, and for this episode, we're sinking our fangs into the highly acclaimed homoerotic vampire reboot series, Interview with the Vampire.
Ugh, so good.
So we can
So
just
good.
look, we just end the
Spoiler
podcast
warning.
right here, honestly, because it's like
Spoiler
so.
warning, it's truly an amazing series. So good. But of course, there are going to be spoilers and all that good stuff. So if you haven't watched the show, please pause, go watch it, and come back. Um, there will more than likely also be spoilers for the movie. The movie's old. Uh, I often forget that I've seen the movie, and I've seen it several times, but I didn't love the movie.
Okay, so Interview with the Vampire is an American television series based on Anne Rice's iconic novel that follows Louis de Pontefract epic story of love, blood, and the perils of immortality, as told to the journalist Daniel Malloy. It premiered in 2022, currently has 2 seasons going into its third. It's created by Roland Jones for AMC, who's also known for Friday Night Lights and Weeds.
I love weeds.
I know, I know. I saw that and I was like, no wonder Keenan likes Interview with the Vampire. It's like it's in the DNA for to be like what you're into, I guess. But I always enjoy when you can see a little bit of creator's tone and like other things. I don't know that you can see the tone of Weeds in Interview with the Vampire, but like
You know,
in their style,
I can say
somewhere small, maybe.
Louis, maybe even Claudia, we could say in season 2, but there are oftentimes some dumb decisions being made. And let me tell you, the mom on Weeds was making dumb decisions left and right.
Yeah, I don't. I think maybe I got through the first season into the second season. I don't know if I ever went past the second season.
So this is just a little Buffy tie-in. I probably should have just saved it for trivia. But there's a Buffy tie-in. So what Buffy writer's brother did music for Weeds?
Uh, Marty Noxon.
Yes, it was. It was
Really?
Marty Noxon. Her brother did music for
Oh,
Weeds. So there's like I think it was a Buffy panel, and they were going down the row asking people like what music they were listening to right at the moment. And of course,
yeah.
Michelle Trachtenberg was like, Abigail, because why not? Which I always love. I thought that was adorable. But Marty Noxon said, well, her brother does all the music for Weeds, so she's always listening. And the music on Weeds is fabulous. So I always love that little bit of Buffy
That's
tie in there.
fun.
Yeah.
That's very cute. So this series stars Jacob Anderson as Louis, Sam Reid as Lestat De Lioncourt, and Eric Bogosian as Daniel Malloy. Um, just the cast is
It's
speaking of
fabulous.
honorable mentions, Bailey Bass is season 1 Claudia, and Delainey Hayles is season 2 Claudia, and Assad Zaman
Come
is
on.
Armand slash Rashid. Um, just A pluses all around. They're all
Yeah.
so good. Even both Claudia's.
You
I'm gonna be
know, I
honest. I had hesitations going into season 2
same.
because I was like, but that Claudia was so good. Because by the end of season 1, you really you were there with Claudia. Like you
Yeah.
really at first you're like, oh, this kid is so annoying. Like, but as she matured while her body remained like as a teenage girl,
hmm
like you just kind of started to see from her perspective. I guess because we were there from the beginning when she was turned and like how she was turned and how it wasn't really her choice. And
Yeah.
so God, I was afraid that it would there would be a weird glitch in the transition to the new
Hmm.
Claudia, and she'll feel totally different. But she didn't. She just felt like a more mature version of the Claudia from season
It
one, which was totally
exactly.
organic.
It worked perfectly. And it also helped that there was some space between the seasons. And I didn't rewatch season one right before I watched season two. So I'm wondering whenever I eventually do a rewatch of the show, like if I'm gonna feel differently, seeing it like going immediately from the end of season one to the top of season two. But I had no qualms with this recast. I thought Delainey did an amazing job as Claudia.
Yeah.
She understood the assignment and got all A's.
Yes. And I am just having a revelation, not revelation, remembrance, realization. I'm remembering something that the tragic like season finale. And I was thinking in my head, oh, I can't wait to see her more on screen in season three. And then I was like, as we were
Spoilers.
talking, I was like, fuck.
Yeah, yeah, I know, I know.
That's a bummer. But yeah, just so
But
it
I mean,
was
it's also they're jumping around in time. So, there's still time to tell more tales of Claudia. Like, there's a small period when she was away from them. We
yeah.
saw a little bit of that. So we can always get Claudia flashbacks.
Yeah.
That's a great part about being in a different time.
Right, right. Also on Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato meter is at 98% and the popcorn meter is 77%. Just a reminder, tomato meter is the critics meter and popcorn's audience score. I'm really surprised that the popcorn meter is as low, so much lower than the tomato meter. That's not
Yeah.
usually the case.
I am, especially with queer content like this, I always have to leave room for review bombing because that's the thing. People will go in and they will just like tank the reviews
Like they're
because
just upset that that the
it's a queer
focus is a
story.
queer
Yeah.
story in this
Yeah.
iteration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That
that's a
like
good
making
point.
it a queer story and the fact that it was also race bent, people
Yes.
people get very like
Yeah, we're gonna get into that.
yeah. So I just for a little bit of a comparison, I did pull the movies scores. So the
Oh,
tomato
really?
meter for the Interview with the Vampire movie was 63%,
Oh.
and the popcorn meter, the average viewer, gave it 86%.
Hmm.
Yes.
I kind of expected the critics were to be higher, honestly, because when I think back on it, feel like I remember it being more celebrated among the the circles of Hollywood rather than so much like a movie on the street that we can all be like, oh, that was so
I
good.
feel like supernatural kind of like genre stuff like that back in the day, the critics were always very like the about it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't serious enough for them.
Yeah.
So let's get a little synopsis of this show and we'll like fly into the discussion. So picture it. It's the year 2022. The vampire Louis de Pointe lives in Dubai, which always a setup. I'm like, why are people of color constantly going to Dubai? It is a setup. Anyways, and Louis seeks to tell the story of his life or afterlife to renowned journalist Daniel Malloy. Beginning in early 20th century New Orleans, Louis' story, I hate those S's with the
Yes,
apostrophe,
yes, it's a bitch, right?
Louis' story follows his relationship with the vampire Lestat De Lioncourt and their formed family, including teen fledgling Claudia. Together, the vampire family endures immortality in New Orleans and beyond. As the interview continues in Dubai, Malloy discovers the truth beneath Louis' story. Yes.
So much story to tell, too.
Yeah, I'm surprised, like in that breakdown, they didn't even go into, we know Louis and Daniel also met in the 70s. Was it the 70s? And they
Mhm.
started to tell this story, and then some stuff went down, and then, yeah, to
Which,
hot foot it
mind
out of there.
you, I'm so glad we got to see more of that or get more of that in season
Hmm.
two. And it was very
Yeah.
satisfying because it went about. Actually, it didn't quite go the way I thought it would. The tone did for sure because there's this sort of flirty like tone, but also there's one of mutual like fascination, I think, and
Yeah.
a certain level of respect between the two of them. I didn't did it even get physical? I don't remember that it did.
I want to say that Louis was going to started feeding on him, and Armand saved him. But he didn't remember Armand
Right.
back then, which that was a fun reveal. The whole time I was like, I wonder if this is Armand. But that was a fun reveal. He was flirting with Louis because he's a big old druggie and he was hoping he could score some drugs. So he went to a gay bar in San Francisco to get
Right.
drugs, basically,
Right.
and went home with a vampire. So
But
y'all need to
do we
listen.
not think that he may be
I
queer?
think it was very much like, no, I'm straight. I just wanted the drugs. I
Yeah,
think
it
that was
was
very
just
much
a
the conversation. I don't think he probably would have done what he had to do to get his fix.
right, right.
Um,
But it wasn't because he like naturally
yeah, but
wanted to.
it was the addiction more than the desire to do it for pleasure.
Mm.
Um, yeah, but it's such an interesting story. I was very into it. And I will say I've never read the book before. I have seen the movie more times than I care to count, and I just don't love it. As far as the characters go, there are often times when characters are race bent or race swapped. And it's just like, okay, so you just made this person black and didn't do anything with it. Whereas I feel like Louis and Claudia had to also deal with being black in the story. And that was what made it interesting and made this Claudia more compelling than
Mhm.
Lil Kirsten Dunst's Claudia to me,
Mhm.
was that she had to operate as not only being a young person who was turned into a vampire at an early age, but also be a black person in New Orleans in the 20s.
Little girl, I'm talking to you.
I don't talk to strangers.
Now, what were you doing in the library? You're not allowed in there.
My mama works here. She cleans classrooms. I read while she's cleaning.
You can read. Oh, just as I thought. A little thief.
And to be in circles and rooms and stuff where the only one of that trio getting respect is Lestat, and it's because he's a white man.
Yeah.
Compared to like what, even though they're all very equal in their own like circle, obviously.
Yeah. I was watching a video about this movie, about the show. And a question someone asked, and I didn't even think about it while watching the show, and it was, we're hearing this story through Louis, like it's his lens, it's his memory. And we don't really know if Louis is a trusted narrator, reliable narrator. Is that the term for it? But you know what I mean? Like how much of it is like Louis' leaning of the story.
And we've
Um,
already seen in moments where his leaning was very right. Like, wasn't that like a big part of like the end of season one into like the first part of season two, where it
it
was
was,
like,
I know it was definitely a huge part of the end of season two was him coming to terms with realizing that Lestat was the one, spoilers, who actually saved him during the hearing in the
oh,
theater.
right. Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Gosh, I really should have rewatched season one just as a refresher. I watched a few like breakdowns and like recaps, quick recaps, but it just doesn't equate
Not
to
the
watching. I
same,
was like,
yeah.
oh, maybe this is just gonna kind of like rehydrate my memory, and I should have rewatched it.
Um, I just rewatched it in like this past year. After the new season came out, I just watched it from season one. And I just like, yep, I like it as much as I remember.
So
Yeah.
good. There's a lot of trauma in the first season that it was hard for me. I like with Paul, unaliving himself
Yes, yes.
and the fight. Oh, so brutal. I just
That fight between Lestat and Louis, it was, yes, it really felt like I was watching an actual domestic violence
well, that's what it
dispute.
was. It was a
Right.
full-on domestic dispute, but it was as someone who enjoys true crime and like stupid horror movies, it was too violent. But it was, of course, these are vampires fighting, but it was real. Like that anger, that frustration, it was real. And then you truly saw just how powerful Lestat was and that he held things from Louis because he never was fully upfront with Louis about everything he could do.
And the thing about that fight scene is if we watched it through the framing of it's just two vampires who are enemies who don't like each other and they're fighting. It would have been like, oh yeah, it would have hit differently. But because they are in love and because they're in a relationship, it feels especially brutal, I
Yeah.
think, watching
Yeah.
that.
And then to see him not fully end Lestat, just let
Mhm.
him suffer. Oh my God. Very Phoebe and Cole of them.
It's
Very Phoebe.
so Phoebe and Cole.
Which, you know how I feel about that storyline.
Ugh,
Is so
ugh,
frustrating.
God.
So
It's
frustrating. Every
talk
time they
about a
vanquish Cole,
character
I was
always
like, take him
making
out.
yes. I mean, I'm honestly can't even remember. Do they ever actually
They do because of his hubris. I think whatever season it's before I think the avatars are season 6 or 7.
I'm in season
So
5 and he's still around.
okay, so I think this is the season where you meet the avatars, but they become like an antagonist the next season. But
Mm.
they go to Cole to. I just started season 5. To suffer my way through Fishtail. I do not like the mermaid episodes.
Ugh,
But I was
no.
also like, Jamie Priestley, where you been, girl?
Yeah.
She was the it girl for a
She's
hot
fun.
minute. Um,
Yeah.
they go to him because he's so powerful, and they're like, "We want you to be an avatar, and we're going to grant you this power." And he's like, "Well, I have the power to make Phoebe love me again. Can I turn back time to when Phoebe and I were truly in love?"
Bro, get a
And they're
fucking
like,
life.
"Yeah, if you do that, it'll be before you're an avatar, and you're just going to be Balthazar, and you'll be vulnerable, and then you'll weaken the collective if anything happens to you." But of course, he's just I have to have Phoebe. It's nothing is worth it without Phoebe. And
Maybe
so
ain't
he
even
does
that
it.
great.
They do the thing, they turn him back, and turns out that even in that alternate reality, they were just together going through the motions, but she was having his affair. She was having an affair, he was having an affair, and he was like, "What? I did it all for you." And they vanquished his ass. And it was like a good vanquish. Like I keep saying I'm gonna do a TikTok about it, but of my top 5 vanquishes, the coal source vanquish when they're in the apartment is just like my favorite.
Wait, is that when they do it once and for all? Is when he pretty much just asked them to, and then like in the apartment, and then the whole like area explodes or something? Or am I thinking of the same one?
So they vanquish him in season 4,
Right.
and then they do it again in season 5. But I can't remember for some reason in that season when he's like all that, I feel like they were in the manor.
Hmm. Maybe it
I
was in the
haven't made it back
attic.
there yet. But it
Huh.
was a very, and because you could like see his skeleton, like it was a very, you could tell the budget, they had a little bit of budget when they vanquished him that last time.
Oh.
It was like, oh, and there was a skeleton.
Mm.
It was good. It was good. But that Cole vanquish in the apartment where she's like crying, my favorite vanquish of the show. But anyways, we're not talking about Charm. We're talking about um, Interview with a Vampire and toxic relationships. and that's how we got to PB and Cole. Toxic
Yeah,
relationships.
Louis and Lestat are so toxic, but I don't know. I really kind of want them to work out, but then I'm like, I want Louis to be able to stand on his own because I feel like
Hmm.
Lestat has been a crutch for him.
I think he's
And
always had crutches, and that's Louis' problem in the show is I feel like he can't. It's hard for him to stand on his own, whether it was like his family or like the lady, the sex worker that he would spend time with. And I don't know if they alluded to them actually having sex or if she was just like a very dear friend. And then
or
like
weird.
yeah, but and then like Louis comes along, I mean Lestat comes along, and then Claudia is there, and Claudia is his crutch, and then he meets Armand, and Armand is his crutch. Like
Yeah.
he
He has a chronic
cannot
crutch problem.
stand on his own as like a person. Like I don't know. I don't know how to like verbalize what I'm trying to say about it, but he is a serial dater
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
a serial relationshipist. And
Not a
um
relationshipist.
and it's like, dude, be alone. Just be alone for a
Yeah, go
century.
find yourself. Like, eat, pray, love that shit.
Um, you know what with immortality, like I
Can you
understand
imagine
it,
how
but you gotta like
boring that would be?
before you seek immortality, find yourself and
Right.
then get your immortality. I know he was
Yes.
changed without his consent, but you know,
I mean, did he kind of consent though?
I don't think he consented.
Because they were kind of like making out, like it was like an intimate moment. And then I felt like he may not realize the gravity of what he was consenting to, but I feel like
I mean, they were
there
probably
was some
having sex. I
understanding.
think they were having sex, yes, but he didn't consent to be turned into a vampire.
Yeah, I don't think it was like a very clear thing. Like I think,
Yeah,
he
he
let him bite
consented to
him
have
and
sex with the man, but I don't think he consented to being turned to a vampire. The same way they forced vampirism on Claudia.
yeah. What would you do if you like wake up after like let's say an accident or something and you are the undead. You are a vampire. You can no longer go out to the sun, ride your bicycle, go to the beach.
It depends on what kind of world. Okay, so this opens up a whole other conversation about vampire lore, right? Because it's like, first of all, if you're going to be a vampire, in what world do you want to be a vampire? I would
Mm.
want to be in a Vampire Diaries vampire world because then I would have some control over my humanity. Um, I don't know if I could ever flip my emotion switch, and if I did, buyers beware.
Are you
Um,
kidding? The first time you drive down to West Hattiesburg, like
but
your
like,
emotion
then
switch
I
is
want to be able to,
flipped.
as someone running for Hattiesburg City Council, singing those lights as part of my platform. But yes, if I was a vampire in the Vampire Diaries world, I would find a witch, be their friend, and get myself a daylight ring and go about my life. I feel like they can eat food, but they still need to drink blood, but they can still enjoy food, if I remember correctly from that show. I could be wrong. And I'm not going to rewatch it because I cannot stand Elena and how they treat Bonnie. So
Yes, it's all
if
very
you
upsetting.
know, if you can remember, any listener, how that works, please let me know. But either way, if I was going to be a vampire, I would have to be a vampire in the Vampire Diaries world. I don't think I could deal with it anywhere else.
They have that super speed and stuff, and just like, yeah, I that would be a fun world to be a vampire in.
Yeah, yeah.
It would be
I mean,
probably the
now,
more flexible.
yeah. Now, if the True Blood world also had daylight rings, we could be in the True Blood world. But you know what? The originals world. Vampire Diaries doesn't get it. It's the originals.
Yes, yes. Originals. That is
Buffalina.
it's rare that you end up liking a spinoff more than the show, or the spinoff is better than the show,
Definitely
but
the
I
exception to the
fully
rule.
believe the originals is a superior series to Vampire Diaries.
It's true.
And the other one, whatever the other one was, I forget what it's
Oh,
called.
Legacies.
Yeah.
Legacies had
It had
so
so
much
much potential.
potential. It had so much potential. It was so cute. And I even liked young, whatever the little girl's name was that became Latina. She was the head. She was Klaus's daughter, Hope.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah, I liked Hope. Like the twins were
yeah,
great. Like,
yeah. They were
I
growing
really
on
enjoyed.
me. Yeah,
I
and
just
it just went off the rails so
it went off the
hard,
rails,
so
and they didn't have
fast.
Caroline. They didn't bring Caroline in until the very end. I'm like, how
Trying to save it,
dare
yeah.
you? How dare you? Caroline ended up being one of my favorite characters from that show, and I was like, damn, I didn't even think I was gonna like
Yes,
Caroline.
right.
Ugh. Let's go.
Is Caroline like the Cordelia of the
She
Vampire
was
Diaries?
she was like the mean friend. Yes. She was like the
Right, who
brutally
you don't
honest,
expect
popular
to
friend.
like, and who you
Yes.
don't expect to become like a better person, much less like the person fighting for
And she had
good.
such a good story. Like she had great character development. Like she
Mm-hmm.
grew as a
Mm-hmm.
vampire, as a person, vampire, whatever. She Caroline, three cheers for Caroline and justice for Bonnie Bennett. Um
Oh, a
so
series with just them would be like
listen, they
perfect.
really missed the mark not bringing Bonnie over to originals and restoring her magic.
Yeah.
But
Ugh.
that's
Well,
a
Julie
story for
Plec
another
has a
time.
thing
Yeah.
against her. I'm convinced.
So let's see, we talked about the characters and what we found interesting about them. Do you think they're fully fleshed out, like at this point?
I think there's a deeper well. I think that we could go. I feel like we haven't seen enough of Louis' rage full side.
Mm, mm.
Like we've seen a lot of that from Lestat, and I don't feel like we've seen I enough of Lestat's like the opposite of that, where he's not just constantly manipulating, but he is
Or
just a
when he's just
creature of
not playing,
love.
where he's just play like, because I feel like Lestat is a character. So I'm wondering if we're going to see like a softer side of Lestat in the next season. Are we
Yeah.
going to see more rage from Louis in the next season? Like, because is he
Mhm.
about to get them vampire? Did he get the vampires that killed Claudia before the end of the season, or no? Did he kill all of them? Because the one
Yes,
guy,
yes,
yeah,
because
they all
the
got
guy
got.
riding the motorcycle and he
They
took his
all got
head
got.
off.
They all got
So
got.
good. That was so satisfying.
It was. Oh, don't you love a satisfying like ending of an antagonist? Like, oh, so good.
It gets me like
Mm.
rock hard.
Not rock hard. I just feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Um,
Two very different like versions.
Jonah, I need you to add that to your list of things to talk to your therapist about.
I don't have a
Um,
therapist anymore.
oh my. Ay, ay, ay. My work pays for us to have better help, but I asked for a black and or queer therapist.
And
And
still none.
well, no, they never responded. Well, the one response I got just made me go, screw it. And I never followed up because I was like, well, I'm not a person of color or queer, but I think you could probably benefit from it. No. Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm.
No,
I already had two straight white therapists, and you're not gonna top Dr. Hamilton. He was so great because the first thing he said was like, clearly I'm not black and I am straight, but I will humble myself and just be an ear and your mental health advocate. And I'm like, so he moved away
just
though.
hearing someone tell you that they will be your advocates, like talk about making a grown man cry.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if my therapist has said versions of that to me, and I
Yeah.
know I'm paying them, but like, don't tell me you're gonna be an advocate for me.
Right. I mean,
The one thing
technically,
I've never had and always wanted.
right. And I mean, technically, this man was my boss, because of the clinic system. But he would look at me in the eye anytime I needed to bitch about work. And he would say, I'm not here to toe the company line. I'm your mental health advocate. And if you need
Mm.
me to act on your behalf with management, I am happy to do that. Yeah.
Mm.
Loved him.
I'm
Loved
so glad
him.
that you had that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay. So
good.
was this new iteration worth creating? And does it lend anything to the franchise or take away from it? I'm gonna say yes. It don't take anything away. It gives it so many
Yes,
more levels.
it
Um,
enriches the world, it enriches the story. I love the liberties that they've taken with this
mhm.
one. And I'm like, if it had to be done, it's being done in the I feel like the best way that it possibly could. And I'm really
Mhm.
excited to see more from this world.
Yeah.
We'll get into it in the trivia a little bit, but this let's just say this will not be the only of Anne Rice's world that we are going to be seeing in the coming years.
Yeah, I don't have I finished that the witch
Mayfair
show?
Witches.
I think I did finish the first season. Season 2 should be out by now.
It is out, yeah.
It is out? Okay.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet. I season one kind of
I
just
didn't love it
left
as
me
much. It was very
feeling
boring.
it was
The only
uh,
only reason I got was on board with as far as I got was because Beth Grant is in it. You know, I'm obsessed with her.
wait, Beth Grant.
Okay, Beth Grant is a character actress that is in everything, and then when you see her face, you're like, "Fuck yeah, she is." She played the ghost in Room with a View. She was the mom that like buried her son behind a wall. She was in Tu Wong Fu. She was in Sordid Lives. She was in the Mindy Project show. Like she always plays these
Oh,
quirky. Exactly. That is when
yes.
people look her up. That is the reaction they always get. Beth Grant, I am obsessed with her. I love her. She's so good. And she plays that kind of like either zany or religious zealot character so
Yeah.
well. It's like,
Yes.
this is my niche. I'm like, please tell me that she's just getting offers left and right to do those characters
I
because
felt
she's
so bad
so
that I
good.
didn't know her name after all this
There was a
time.
point where I was like, I gotta look her up and I'm gonna commit her name to memory because she's in everything I've ever seen her in, I love. And she's just always a scene stealer. No matter how soft she
Yeah.
is in a scene, she's gonna take it over. It's fabulous. But let's take a quick break and then we'll be right back. Are we looking forward to more interview with the vampire? Not a vampire, the vampire, because I like saying a vampire, but we're only talking to one right now.
Yeah.
Well, I guess
Yeah.
technically two, because he was talking to Rashid, but anyway.
Rashad.
Rashad is my little brother's middle name. Thank you very much. So
Oh, well, I wasn't making fun of Rashad. I was just thinking, like, I feel like Rashad is a very different vampire than Rashid.
Rashad don't put up with shit. Do you hear me? Rashad will
Mm-hmm.
be murking folks left and right.
Especially the way Rashid puts up with shit. Like, that guy.
Rashid is something else. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to more for sure. I'm looking forward to not just more from the Interview with the Vampire story, but also other things from this world, like stories from this world, because we're getting it with the Mayfair Witches, so
Mhm.
there's more.
And they dropped the Mayfair House name in the first season. And I love a world building. So I need this stuff to come together. I mean, like, I live for a spin, like not a spin, I feel like a crossover. I want to see the vampires and the witches like get into it. Like I want to see it, give it to me. Let's build this world.
Yeah.
Anne wrote the books, so y'all make the shows and make it happen. And maybe once I make it over to the library and get my library card number again because I can't keep up with it, I will sign up for Hoopla so I can get the books. Hoopla is a free audiobook series. You can tie it to your library account, and several of the books on Hoopla have audiobooks, so you can download audiobooks
I think you told
for
me
free.
about this. That's really cool.
Yeah, and so I've been like threatening to do, but like I just never have time to get over to the library. Maybe I'll go tomorrow. Oh, Jonah, so tell me, how are we gonna rate this series? As y'all know, we have a 1 through 5 rating scale, starting with what the fuck were they thinking? The mortgage was due, nostalgia blanket, it was a good time, or 100% would watch again. Jonah,
I
what are
would
you giving this
have to
series?
give it a 100% will watch again because I have watched it again freely, happily, and probably would continue. There's just so much good shit in it that I couldn't keep myself away. So yeah, we don't get enough like queer vampire storylines, I feel.
Which is wild because how do you live forever and not even play in the waters? Like, I feel like every
Right?
vampire is bi. Like, if you go back and you watch any of the old Angel and Spike scenes, you
Yes.
know it was just a good time amongst all four of them.
Mm-hmm.
With Darla and Drusilla are in the corner going, "Okay, boys, I see y'all over there."
Yes.
Um,
But I like to
yeah, I mean, like
imagine.
that is, I just think that is something that's very synonymous with being, like, just being queer in general should be very synonymous with being vampires. And I'm really sad because the way they built the relationship with Klaus and Stefan, like when they were doing the 20s flashbacks,
Mm-hmm.
you could tell that Klaus felt something for Stefan.
Mm.
And he did not like Stefan getting close to his sister. I think Klaus had a thing for Stefan. And also Damon and Elijah had really good chemistry.
Hmm.
Go back and like look at some of their scenes together, and I was like, there's fanfic. I know there has to be fanfic out there.
Give me the fanfic.
So Jonah, I think, as I said earlier, I love it. I love it. And I think I would watch it again, but there's just a lot of trauma. I think I would probably fast forward to season two. I'd probably rewatch season two more than I rewatch season one. Season one was rough in some points as far as that stuff goes.
Yeah.
And now when he took out that racist man and left him like bisected on in front of the church, that was satisfying.
It was
Um,
so satisfying.
Also never get to use word bisected.
Bisect. Bisect. Wait. Bisect. Not.
Bisected. It's like
And
being cut in
dissect
half.
is another.
Yeah.
Wait, dissect and bisect are two different words?
Dissect is basically so like the Black Dahlia was bisected. She was cut at her waist. So you're like
Oh, so
cut
it's
into two
about
equal
what
pieces.
direction? So, but like what we do to frogs when we're studying them in high school in
I,
science
I
class,
guess it's
like,
just because you're cutting them. I don't know why, but I just know that bisected is like two equal parts. So it's typically when you're cut at the waist.
hmm,
Yeah.
okay.
It's just not a word you get to use very often.
Yeah, that's true.
So you got some fun facts and behind
I
the scenes trivia for us. So
got the
hit me with some of that good
funnest.
stuff.
The funnest effects here, starting with the setting of the series, which is in New Orleans in season one. Primarily takes place in the historic red light district called Storyville. It was
Hmm.
open from 1897 to 1917. Most buildings from that time were leveled and demolished during the Great Depression, and only a few structures managed to survive. As a result of this, most of the set presented in certain scenes had to be built from scratch. Storyville was also known as the birthplace of New Orleans jazz, and is associated with the famed musicians Louis Armstrong, Ferdinand Jelly Roll Morton, and Buddy Bolden. The show's second season was greenlit before the show's first season aired. I think I
Hmm.
remember hearing that or reading that and thinking, "Oh shit, we're in for a ride." Sam Reid, who portrays Lestat, is a huge fan of the Vampire Chronicles novels and had read them as a child. After he was cast, he went back and reread the novels to study Lestat as a character. I love the
Oh,
idea
fun.
of him being like a super fan because I feel like it comes through in his role. He is so committed to Lestat
Hmm.
because to hear him outside of this role in like an interview promoting the show is trippy. It's like it's wild how someone's um like certain elements of their appearance and their voice can totally transform them into another person. And Ras
Wow, not Ras.
Oh, Anne Rice herself announced that she had regained the rights and was planning to adapt the novels for television alongside her son, Christopher Rice. And as we know, Anne Rice has gone on to a higher realm.
Oh, I did not know that.
Oh yeah, she did, girl.
Bye, girl. I do want to like throw in a little something about Storyville because I wanted to make sure it wasn't one of those low-key America fucked over a town of black folks,
Mm,
um, a la Central Park. But it
mm,
just from like the AI generated overview on Google, allegedly during World War II, the U.S. Navy ordered the district closed because they didn't want distractions for the troops. Um, and that the area was mostly razed to build the Iberville housing projects. But most of those buildings were destroyed, and citizen groups were pressured by the mayor to move out and close those things down. So I think
mm,
it was a little bit of that going on because it was mostly
mm.
black and like, but it was evidently very important to tourism at the time, and that since has been romanticized as a catalyst for jazz musicians.
Well, it probably breathed life into
Leaving.
the city in a way that
Yeah,
nothing had at that point.
yeah.
So,
Because Black people have always driven culture, but are never given credit for it.
mhm.
We have all the fun shit. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. In an interview, Jacob Anderson revealed that his dialect coach wanted him to do a French Creole accent for Louis. The accent was common in early 20th century New Orleans. However, Anderson wasn't comfortable using the accent. Instead, he decided to use the New Orleans accent. He learned the New Orleans accent from carefully listening to the speech patterns of the locals.
Okay. Yeah, I I don't think I'm an expert in those accent like New Orleans accents, but I definitely kind of get a bit of a cringe when I hear a bad like Southern accent in general. So I found myself not cringing during this show.
Right. It felt, considering is he British? I think
It's
he's
highly
British.
possible. I feel like they don't like hiring Black American actors for Black American
Mm.
characters.
While filming the love scene between Lestat and Louis in this show's pilot episode, Sam Reed and Jacob Anderson, while nude, had to balance on a small platform that was lifted by a mechanical crane by the stunt crew. Anderson said, "We're balancing on that rig and sort of holding on to each other for balance as well." Reid stated that he's proud of the scene and calls it beautiful. Both actors further proclaimed that despite the awkwardness of filming the scene, they got through it together.
Oh, that's cute. Do we know if either one of them are like queer, like in real life?
I want to say Sam Reed is.
It says that Sam Reed has admitted to being bisexual, and his wife is also bisexual. So he is queer in a straight passing relationship.
Hmm. Interesting.
And it's so nice seeing Jacob Anderson be more than like Grey Worm or whatever his character was on that show.
Yeah, he's so talented. And he's a really talented musician as well. Like
Oh, I didn't
he
know
has
that.
really great music.
I love that.
Yeah, I'll send you some of his EPs or songs. They're a nice little addition to the playlist. I discovered his musical side I think in the last season of Game of Thrones. Got that. I was just fascinated by him, and I wanted to know what other projects he had done, and so I started following him, and then he started pushing out music, and I was like, and it's different. It's a very different sound, but then you hear things that are familiar, so like influences that are familiar in it. But yeah, I really like his music.
Oh, cute.
He's a very
Okay.
well-rounded
So
artist.
I'm sorry, I didn't. Is he a vocalist or does he
Yes,
play?
sorry.
Oh,
He
okay.
is, yeah, he's a singer,
Okay.
songwriter, musician.
Okay. Cute. I love that. Okay,
And
Jacob, you better do it, boo.
he doing it. In the original novel and in the Interview with a Vampire 1994 film, Louis de Pointe
De Pont de Lac. Don't pronounce it
du
Pont de Lac.
Pointe de Lac. Louis
Pont,
Pointe.
Pont de Lac. Pont de Lac.
Whew, that's stressful. It's a white Creole man. I got through all of that just for like 3 words. In this show, the character's race has changed to African American Creole. This change was done to partially tell the story in a new way and explore racial themes in the New Orleans setting and early 20th century.
Yes, so people, when you are race swapping characters, you got to make sure that the culture is in there. And that often helps when you have someone representing that culture in the writer's room. I do wonder what the writer's room looked like, but
Mhm.
continue.
Given that Lestat has the birth date of Anne's husband, Stan, and Claudia is a stand-in for her own daughter, Michelle, an argument could be made that Interview with the Vampire is an autobiography of an aspect of her life, with Louis being the embodiment of Anne. Anne's formative years consisted of a strict upbringing in a sheltered Irish Catholic working class community next to New Orleans' Garden District. As she entered adulthood, she was drawn to the passionate atheist Stan Rice, whose physical appearance and his daring confidence served as the inspiration for Lestat, opened her eyes to a wider world.
This is
Struck by,
interesting.
yeah, it's very fascinating. Struck by his confidence and intelligence, Anne could sense even then that she just met someone who would change the course of her life. Stan became a Adonis-like young superstar poet and painter in the Bay Area, barely past 30. He was also the youngest professor at San Francisco State University. Moreover, after reading the existentialist philosophers, which she avoided due to its placement on the church's indexed or forbidden book list, it
If you're a
marked
part of an organization that has a forbidden book list, leave the
pitch
organization.
that organization. It marked a gradual break from the faith of her birth. As she said in many interviews in the past, Interview with the Vampire reflects a quote, quest for meaning in a world without God.
Interesting. Honestly, for me, the existence of vampires means that there is something else out there. Like, how could there not be like that kind of level of supernatural existence and that there not be something higher? And then, of course, you find out about like Akasha and all the other stuff, like the upper level vampires that have been around that are almost godlike in a way.
Mhm.
Um, I hope that it was a good marriage and that she did not also have to endure a horrible domestic dispute like they did. That's the
Yeah.
first thing when you're like, oh, it was like a mirror of my life. And I'm like, I hope not. I don't know if that fight was in the book either. I don't, again, I've never read the book, so I don't know if that
Yeah,
fight was in the
I'm not
book.
sure either.
Um, and I don't know if this is true or not because I was never like I'd never read the books or followed Anne Rice, but I was told there was like a period where she stopped writing those supernatural kind of books because she like went back into the church and was like
Yes.
super religious. And I
Yes.
guess like towards the end she must have been like, what was I thinking? Or her
Right.
money got low. And she was
Mm.
like, oh no, those books made me some money. So let me just pump
Mhm.
out a few. Like I don't know what that was, but this is very interesting to get that background because I didn't really know anything about
Yeah.
Anne
I thought it was
Rice.
very, very fascinating. I didn't either. She's always been sort of a mysterious figure to me. I remember when I went to like my first ever spring break away on my own as a young adult was with my best friend in New Orleans back in 2009. And I took a walking history tour as a haunted history tour.
I've never
Um,
done any of those.
Really, it was a
Never
lot
done
of
one.
fun. It's so touristy, but
But
it's
sometimes
very
that stuff is fun.
it was very cool and very insightful. And we walked through a lot of the Garden District, and we went by one of the stops on the tour was Anne Rice's former home. So it was really cool to just look at that and think how many of these books have been written in this house, like it's just it's kind of surreal when you're like hearing and then you're seeing houses like the house in the Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which I think they also used in Coven in American Horror Story Coven. Um I've seen that house, I feel like in so many like New Orleans set like film
Yeah.
and TV shows. Um it has so much character. I love New Orleans. During the show's early development, the news of the show's casting was controversial. Shocker. In particular, the casting of Jacob Anderson as Louis and Bailey Bass as Claudia caused skepticism and racist anger among some fans. The
Thus the review
show's
bombing.
yeah, you're onto something there. The show's producer, Roland Jones, defended the casting choices and stated that the race change of Louis and Claudia is significant to the show's adaptation of Anne Rice's novel.
I get very frustrated. And honestly, sometimes I'm glad that I was never like a comic book reader when I was a kid. Always just too intimidated by them. I never knew where to start. And people that were into comics, I felt like if I was like, what should I start with? I always felt like they would be like, what? You've never read blah, blah, blah." So I never got into them, but I
I
was
kind
like
of felt
superhero
that way
stuff.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, but now I can appreciate like the TV shows and the movies because I'm not trying to tie it back to a storyline from a comic book that's 30 plus years old.
Yeah.
But people want you to take the book or the comic, lift it, and put it in real life. And it's like, these are adaptations. They're not going to be the same thing. Let these writers cook and tell the story that they're trying to tell. Someone said, oh God, I can't remember what show I was talking about, but they were like, just give them a chance to tell the story before you make any harsh decisions
Right. I
about
agree.
it.
Do you think part of that is because those hardcore comic book fans, when they're reading the story on the page, are so desperately trying and wanting to see it visually, like in action, in real life, so to speak, or
Mhm.
and so like if you're getting a version of this like comic that you love, like, and it's not that, do you feel a little cheated as a fan? You know what I mean? Like,
That's
uh,
fair. I don't know, but I do feel that some people, especially a lot of conservatives, have failed to see just how truly like progressive and liberal comics have always been. Like there are people who are like Superman is a perfect example of like white masculinity and it's like just because he's a white man. But Superman is this tale of
with a good
a refugee. He, like he's a symbol of hope. He fights for the little person. Like I think the very first Superman comic, he's like punching a Nazi. Like it's Superman has never been a white supremacist.
It is weird. It's
Yeah,
weird how
people
they've
don't
taken and
see.
rewritten this character to suit their own like ignorant
Yes,
values.
my friend sent me a picture from a Reddit thread last night, and I broke down. It was a little boy or a child in Gaza walking down the street, and somebody took a picture, and they had on a Superman cape, and it had the shield on the back. And she sent it to me and she was like, this broke me. And I said, this is truly what Superman is. This is what he
Oh,
stands for. He is like hope for everyone. Yes, he's a white man, but he is a man that was created by, if I'm not mistaken, they were Holocaust survivors. But there were two Jewish men that created Superman. And we just went back and forth about like how important Superman is, what a symbol he is, and then I had to take a little time to gush about Lois Lane because I love Lois Lane. But I'm getting teary-eyed now thinking about that picture.
yeah, no, I am too, and I'm not the teary-eyed type usually.
But I'm like, this is just that symbol, and people are even with like the X-Men, that is like very much an allegory for Black and queer people. And they were saying like the X-Men 97 cartoon, oh, they made it woke, which I hate when people do that, but they're just like, oh, it's so blah blah blah. And I'm like, did you watch the old cartoon?
And also,
Because
what were you thinking when you were watching it? Like, what did you think this
I
was?
I mean like we had things like Captain Planet and X-Men and like these cartoons were so progressive. They were teaching us about about acceptance and fucking like taking care of the planet. What the fuck happened?
Yeah, it's baffling. for lack of a better term.
Mm. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me get off my
Um,
soapbox.
Speaking of adaptations, Anne Rice catalog AMC acquired in 2020 that will be serialized for the Immortal Universe. Um, it's
Immortal universe.
yeah,
I thought you said
that's
immoral, and I was like, "Nah, okay.
oh, I may have. So among the series that we can be expecting, the Vampire Chronicles series, which is what we are in currently, Interview with the Vampire Lestat, Queen of the Dam, The Tale of the Body Thief, Memnoch the Devil, The Vampire Armand, Pandora, Vittorio the Vampire, Blood and Gold, Prince Lestat and the Prince of Atlantis,
Not Atlantis.
and Blood Communion, A Tale of Prince Lestat. That's a lot. I'm like, are they planning truly to turn all of those into
I don't know if I'm going to be able to
series?
go through all that. Like, maybe they're going to take some of these stories. Like, I think Interview with a Vampire, they should find a way to take these storylines and weave it and just call it
Yes.
Interview with a Vampire
Yes.
without having different. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll probably watch it until I'm like, I can't watch this
Meanwhile, the only like iterations,
anymore.
the Lives of the Mayfair Witches series is The Witching Hour, Lasher, and Taltos.
Oh, okay. Tell me what the hell Lasher is because I want to know what he's about. I just feel like he's a demon, but we don't know anything yet.
And the Vampire Chronicles and the Lives of the Mayfair Witches crossover novels, Merrick,
Hmm.
Blackwood Farm, and Blood Canticle.
What's a canticle? Hmm.
I don't know. It sounds like a foot condition
Google.
or something.
Oh, it's a hymn or a chant, typically with a biblical text forming a regular part of a church service. Okay.
Yeah, so that's a lot of
Learned.
Anna Rise content coming out, and I
Yeah,
wonder if that's over like a 10-year span, like the way that they do with Marvel, in
maybe so.
phases.
It'll be interesting if they can find ways as they're telling the interview, like the Vampire Chronicle stuff and the Mayfair Witches, and then as they come, because I don't know if these seasons are going to run like at the same time, or if they're going to run like one is in the fall, one's in the spring, and then maybe have like a crossover happen over like a holiday or over summer break. I'm interested to know how that's going to go. Because I used to live for those CW DC show crossovers. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I always had a good time. Hmm.
Well, Keenan, what you watching?
Girl, what you watching?
Honestly, what the hell have I been watching? It's just my regular shows. I haven't really watched anything new.
I've started back to Buffy.
Oh, love it.
I
Always go back to the basics.
yeah, I think I ever since Charisma got on TikTok and has been talking about like her time on the show here and there. And then I've been, I get a lot of the like Buffy content on my FYP on TikTok and in my reels and Instagram. Not so much on Instagram, but definitely on TikTok. Um I've just like I'm like, yeah, I love that scene or I love that episode. And then I
Hmm.
found myself just wanting to go back to it because it's a safety net, I think, in a way
It
of
is.
hugging you and, feeling something familiar.
Yeah. I was trying to try and take a quick look at my up next, but for some reason it's not showing all the shows on the apps. I'd have to look on my television. I really don't know what I'm watching these days. I'm taking, uh, honestly, I feel like with the way the news cycle has been, I've just been living on like TikTok lives and dreading every day,
Mm,
dreading every day.
yeah.
Like learning from people on TikTok lives and then just like, what crazy thing is this fucking orange flavored douche going to do?
Yeah, it's very there's a heaviness in the air um that cannot be shaken until
They
it's
just removed like in the LGBTQ, they removed the TQ from like the State Department's stuff. So like we pulled up the website and they were doing like travel advisory stuff and it just said LGB. And I'm like,
God, they're really going out of their way to address things that are to fix problems that aren't problems that like how about we deal with the real shit that
because they can't.
actually
They
affects
ran
us?
on a bunch of shit that they can't do. And now, just to like appease the base, they do this evil, mean shit. And the whole time, it's like, this man told y'all he was bringing prices down. You were like, I voted him for the price of eggs. Well, bitch, they cost more. And
Yeah.
now also, we don't have any like health information being disseminated to the people. And there's like a tuberculosis outbreak in fucking Kansas. Tuberculosis,
Like
2025.
there is a
And bird flu is on
tuberculosis
its way.
outbreak. I did
Yeah.
not know this.
Yeah, it's at the point where I'm like, it's just too much news, but I feel like part of my job, I need to be abreast of certain things,
Mhm.
but it's also just like dangerous to not be informed on certain stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a TB outbreak in Kansas City,
Wow. That's a big deal. Like
and
that's
one of the contaminants is from raw milk. And you know, some of these fucking dumbasses have been going out there drinking unpasteurized milk that is, I thought, illegal in the US. Anyway,
so they're just sucking from the tit of a cow, basically.
I guess it's tit to bottle and giving it to their kids. And it's supposed to have all this extra stuff, but I'm like, at the end of the day, we're not supposed to be drinking cow's milk. We're the only being that drinks milk from another animal and continues to do it after we're babies.
I honestly can't think about it too much, Keenan, because
I'm sorry.
when I put it in the framework when I put it in the framework of that, I it wigs me out and I like, oh, but what if we drink? Like it is weird when you take a step back and you think about it that way. It's
Yeah.
kind of feels gross. It feels like I don't
Yeah.
know, like bad. I don't know.
I'm 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 frustrated. And you know, the other day I Googled, like, can we have recall elections for like Congress people or senators? And it's like, no, that is in the Constitution that you can't recall ineffective politicians like that.
Mm, mm-mm.
So, midterm elections, please, one, two, three, however many people are listening to this, get the fuck off your ass and go vote. People just didn't vote. It's not that a bunch of people voted third party and that more people wanted him. It's just that the people who voted in 2020, the vast majority of them chose to stay home.
Mhm.
Because even if you took all the third party votes and put them to Kamala, that wouldn't have helped.
Yeah. Uh, It's it's giving up your the one of the most important ways to actually affect change in
Hmm.
our country, giving that up to stay at home to avoid crowds or because you don't feel like getting out
Yeah.
or whatever your reason is. Maybe you felt like you didn't have good options, whatever. There's always an option better than the other.
And then, hold on, I'm going to say just two more things about this. And I know it's stressful. So there was an article that came out, and sh there were, I'm trying to find the number, like thousands of votes. Like a thousand of people were wrongfully purged from the voter rolls. people that would have voted, they have been purged from the rolls. And that's
Like,
why they kept telling
nationally?
people, yeah. And so whenever we were doing messaging through work, one of the things we asked people was like, have you checked your voter information? Because at some point in time in several states, including ours, a little button popped up on the Secretary of State website saying unregistered to vote.
Mm.
Now, on the one in Mississippi, you have to print something out and sign it to be removed. But some, I believe Georgia, you could just go on the website and unregister someone to vote. We were doing voter registration drives and were purposefully given the wrong address information for students. So I know our youth organizer and the person I work with at USM, there's probably about 200 students that weren't able to vote because we were given the wrong information.
That's infuriating.
On top of like the ballot boxes that we know had like fires in them and the bomb threats that were called into heavy Democratic areas, I don't understand what the fuck Democratic leadership is doing.
I don't think they know either.
It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. But anyway,
A whole other podcast, Fran.
yeah, I'm stressed. Thank y'all for letting me. So what am I watching? A lot of fucking news.
Thanks for listening to the Rewind podcast. Before you go, please take a moment to show some love for your favorite podcast by leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Every positive review, rating, and subscriber helps.
Yes. You can also connect with us on the socials. So you can find us on Facebook. Of course, just search the Rewind Podcast, or if you do the Rewind Podcast one, we'll pop right on up. Blue Sky, the Rewind Podcast bsky.social. Instagram is the Rewind Podcast, and TikTok is at the Rewind Podcast.
We'd love to hear from you. Email the Rewind Podcast 1@gmail.com. And you can find me on Instagram at JSTaylorWrites or at Keeping It Reels.
You can find me on Blue Sky, Spill, and TikTok at Keeks on Camera. I'm still on Instagram, but you know, you got to have Meta until I'm going to have it until after this campaign, and then I'm saying fuck off Meta. You'll also find me not giving any money to Target. So, yeah.
Well, on that note, be kind.
And please rewind. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Oh, brother.
Yeah.
Just be kind and listen to the rewind.